Elon Musk has just bought Twitter, and it's creating a huge furore, obviously, in many different ways. And he's admitted, I'm going to do lots of things in the next few months, and we're going to get some wrong, and we're going to pull them and try something else. He's going to try and work out a way of making it a sustainable business model. But also, he wants to bring back what he perceives to be genuine free speech on the platform. Is it possible, Jordan, do you think, that he can do that? Or are we now so entrenched in tribalism, particularly on social media, that it's almost impossible to do what he wants to do?
Well, you couldn't have picked a better day to talk about this with me, because I just got a paper sent to me today by Jonathan Haidt. He didn't write the paper. It will be published. It's published in a journal called Personality and Individual Differences, and it's an examination of the personality traits associated with, let's say, excessive and self-promoting internet usage. And if you don't mind, I'd like to read you a couple of the descriptions of what the people found, because it's so absolutely spot on and relevant. I don't think we are descending into tribalism. I think what's happening is that the virtualization of the world is enabling people who behave in a particular antisocial way, in a self-grandizing and self-promoting antisocial way. And I'll just read you the descriptions that are taken directly from this paper. So it was an actual study of online behavior. Women characterized by high self-centered antagonism, neurotic narcissism, Machiavellian views, Machiavellian tactics, so that's manipulativeness, meanness, disinhibition, physical sadism, and indirect sadism, used Instagram for a longer time and more frequently than did men. In women, verbal sadism and emotionality was associated with longer, while honesty, humility, and conscientiousness was with a shorter Facebook usage time. Furthermore, women high in agentic extroversion, so that's manipulative self-promotion, and indirect sadism used Facebook for a longer time and more frequently than men. And so I've thought for a while that one of the things that's happening to us as we virtualize the world is that we're enabling the small percentage of people, it's usually about 3% in general populations, who use manipulation and reputation savaging and denigration and self-promotion, so the genuinely psychopathic types, to dominate the social conversation and to spew their poisonous and manipulative venom into the public domain, not only with no fear of being stopped and no inhibition, which is almost all applied socially, but also while being monetized and promoted by the people who run the social media channels. And every society forever has had to contend with a small percentage of people who will utilize all the benefits of society only for themselves. They had to contend with the fact that those people, if not brought under control, can demolish the structure of the entire society. And I think the polarization that we're feeling is a consequence of their untrammeled expression online, Instagram, Facebook, and in online comment forums like Twitter.
But that stuff you read out just seemed to be gender specific to women. Presumably it also applies in other ways to men as well on social media.
Oh yeah, well I think the reason that it applied in this study in women is because Instagram is very heavy image use. It involves heavy use of images, and there are reasons to assume that because of that, it attracts women who are directed towards short-term impulsive mating strategies, and that's another sign of impulsive, antisocial, and psychopathic behavior. I think you'd see the same thing in men. In fact, I've been talking to psychologists, great psychologists, to make sure that I'm on the right track here about those who post repeatedly, say, in online forums, especially in relationship to comments, and you certainly see that same pattern of sadism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and narcissism characterizing the men who are also incentivized to use what used to be classic female antisocial strategies to advance themselves in the reputational hierarchy.
But the bottom line is...
Exploiters, fundamentally.
Right, but the bottom line is that there is a small percentage of people generating a vast amount of noise. What impact is that happening on society, do you think?
Well, I think it skews our perceptions of what normal people are like. We assume that what we're getting you know, when you sample the world, when you're walking through it, you make the assumption that you're getting an unbiased representation of the things going on around you. And when you're on an online platform and, say, reading comments, you also have the assumption that what you're seeing is something like a sample of public opinion. But it's not. You know, because if 10 strangers came up to you randomly in the street, then you'd have a bit of a sample of what people randomly think. But behavior online isn't random, and the people who post aren't precisely normal. And I have been talking with Jonathan Haidt and Jean Twenge about this, and I think they might know more about it than anybody else in the world. And it's pretty clear that the people who are dominating, say, online comment sections, and I would especially say this is true of the people who post anonymously, and there's other markers for this sort of behavior as well, they dominate the political discourse. And what's happening in some sense is that we have a new form of pollution that's also corporate sponsored, and it's pollution of the domain of public discourse. And the pollution occurs because the social media companies are either enabling or failing to control, you know, those known in the popular parlance as trolls. But they're not just comical trolls, you know, using derision in some cute way and having their say in the free speech domain. They're really poisonous individuals, and they're poisoning the entire domain of discourse.
So what can Elon Musk do? What can Elon Musk do about it, do you think? If you were advising him on this, I mean, ironically, at the moment, you're not on Twitter. Do you want to come back now that Musk is in charge? Do you think you should be restored? Do you want to be back on Twitter? And secondly, what would you advise him to do about this issue of the trolls and so on?
Well, the first thing I would advise, and I'm going to be advising the political people I'll be talking to over the next few weeks of precisely this, and I have talked it over with Twenge and Haidt to make sure that I'm not, like I said, off on a personal tangent. I would say there's no excuse for including the anonymous posters with the real human beings. And I think that social media platforms who have a certain reach, maybe it's 1 million subscribers, and I don't really know what figure is appropriate, should be required to implement know your customer laws, and then that the people who are posting who are genuine, verified human beings willing to abide by their words with their personal reputation should be put in one comment section, and then the online, anonymous, cowardly, narcissistic, pathological troll demons who are polluting the public discourse should be put in a different comment section. And if you want to go to hell and visit the troll demons and see what they have to spew, you can. But otherwise, you can be among the normal human beings engaged in normal civil human discourse. Right. And that would separate the bloody psychopaths from the bulk of decent, normal people. And, you know, 97% of people aren't psychopathic.
Yeah.
And so we are talking about a small minority here, but they have the upper hand.